Okay, so let's continue watching this, boys. Let's see what they say.
Was Lumi too greedy? Because he definitely could have taken that tower without having to put 2 Salamanes and a Quorum in it. He only needed to wait one more round, although the Annihilation did come out, so maybe it was the right play to take that bad boy out.
How would you have taken that tower without playing those slacks?
Sometimes we have seen that getting those
what are you talking
incredibly
about?
early ramps are sometimes too early. Gives your opponent a lot of time, a lot of chances to get around it.
Yeah, there was a lack of control. There weren't any Sanctums on Lumi's side. He didn't have control of initiative. Didn't draw Arcane Assaults, for example. And that made it so that Luna was able to go into lane 2.
Yep.
Swim had Arcane Assault in hand as well as a Sanctum if he needed to use it. He had initiative currently, so he could just hold it. Lumi didn't have the answer. Even if he did have the answer, Swim could respond with his own Arcane Assault. And it was basically a checkmate from Swim, able to reset that second lane, and then everything else was just Lumi just not having enough fire in his soul.
Wow, in his soul? Goodness gracious. And I would like to remind you guys what is on the line again.
Was there any strategy? Okay, this is a very good question. Was there any strategy in deciding which game you played on game 1, which is to say which deck? The answer is very much yes. When you're in a conquest format in a card game, deck selection is a huge part of the little mini game you play. It's sort of like rock, paper, scissors. Both players are aware that there's an unfavored matchup and a favored matchup. And when you're choosing which deck to play first, it's literally rock, paper, scissors, thinking about what decks they've played first in the past, what deck you think they'll switch off, or like, and you actually get a pretty big advantage by doing this. So it's to the point where, like, if you actually want to be a good tournament player, you should actually be, trying to kind of win this rock, paper, scissors minigame, right? Look into players' backgrounds, see if there's kind of some sort of pattern to how they're selecting decks. Because even if you increase your win rate of this rock, paper, scissors minigame of choosing the right deck and predicting what they're going to choose properly, even if you only accomplish increasing your win rate of this minigame by like 5 or 10%, that's still worth it. Very easily. So like, I personally opened with mono blue. Lumi had a pattern of opening with Storm, and he actually gamed me. He kind of won the minigame. I thought he would open with Storm. I kind of wasn't sure if he was necessarily even thinking about it that much, because he doesn't really have as much of a background in card games. But he ended up kind of winning that minigame in our series, and we got some unfavorable matchups because of it.
Their pride will be hurt, and their bodies will be destroyed.
Like, imagine if we had gamed him. Like, if we had brought Ramp instead on the first game, that's much more favorable. We're playing Ramp against Red-Black. If we had kind of successfully predicted who would go first there. We're playing Ramp against Red-Black. We're pretty favored to win there. And then, we're kind of on an uphill climb for the rest. It's really, really important to note that, especially because this is a conquest format, if my Ramp wins there, it doesn't have to go against the Salamene deck, right? Like, I actually, it's really hard to express how important this rock, paper, scissors game is. Like, think about it. Ramp is favored against Red-Black, but like maybe a 20% win rate against Salamene Storm, right? Based on the opening decisions of which deck was played first, I was extremely unfavored because I lost the mono blue game right away. And his Red-Black deck got out. Because in Conquest, when you win, your deck is out. When his deck got out, immediately it was doomed that my Ramp would have to play against Salamene Storm, which is like an 80-20 matchup, which is extremely unfavored. If we had opened with Ramp instead and kind of won this rock, paper, scissors thing, we're favorable into Red-Black, and if we can win that and get our Ramp deck out, we don't have to play the Ramp versus Salamene Storm matchup. So this is really, really, really important to actually spend a lot of time thinking about if you want to be a like a pro tournament player in Artifact. Being a professional Artifact. Okay, let's continue watching.
Impressive stress that they have seen. And here we are. The potential final game, assuming that there's not a tie.
Well, Swim has won this. He has Double Stars Line in hand and the Time of Triumph, and this could be one of the easiest calls of my career.
Okay, well, this is going to be real funny when he loses.
Panda's very wrong. Right now, off the opening hands and off the flop, my win percentage is probably about 25 or 30%. Like, this is a horrendously unfavored matchup.
Just said, having these early game super ramps can sometimes be dealt with. I mean,
like, if he, it almost doesn't matter what the ramp player draws, because if he draws his cards,
that is correct.
If he's able to
Luminous,
find
the White
Annihilation,
Dragon,
I can't win this
does
game.
have a way to potentially stop this, but we will be seeing a turn 2 Time of Triumph.
Now, depending where this Drow goes, if Lumi plays around the possible double Stars line Time of Triumph, he has to play the Drow in the second lane.
Okay.
To make
So
sure
this
is available on
is a really important decision-making point. I'm deploying my Drow. He's deploying his Drow. I've got 2 stars into a Time of Triumph in my hand. I know he's putting the Drow mid. That's actually very obvious. He wants to go lefter if possible. He doesn't want to stack green, and he doesn't want to go into the Bristleback lane. So the Drow has to go mid. I am choosing where to put my Drow to potentially try to go off, but I can't go off against green, which means if I land against Drow, I can't try to stars line this turn. So I'm thinking about it, and you have to kind of think ahead, right? So think ahead on this board and tell me what you see. You see 2 stars lines and a Time of Triumph. I think that fundamentally, ramp players probably overstate the importance of the turn 2 Time of Triumph. I actually don't really like turn 2 Time of Triumph that much, because you're limited to using it on 2 heroes instead of 3. And it's very, very committal resource-wise. Turn 2 Time or Quorum can win you the game in certain matchups, but I think they are a little overrated. So I'm thinking about this all right now. I'm planning turns ahead. I know the Drow's going mid, and I have the duel in my hand. So I'm thinking, okay, if I can land a lane where I'm kind of emerging victorious, I want to duel the Drow wherever she's coming down, and I note that I have the Legion there that can do that. And then when the Drow is dead, since the Drow is duelable and we're not playing into the Treant lane, once the Drow is dead, then I can time potentially 3 heroes instead of 2, and I can do it in a way where I don't lose to Gust.
But then you have the Treant there already, so it could still answer with a Gust.
Wow, that's smart.
This is a game of chess from both of these players.
This is true.
Lumi reads what could he possibly have, and you know the most impactful play is the one you have to play around. And the double stars line Time of Triumph turn 2 would be that from Swim. So Lumi,
let's go ahead and watch how this plays out.
Could just make sense to play Drow there anyway, but it helps in countering this anyway.
This could hurt. Now, if Lumi is smart, he will wait and see if we can get one of those stars aligned first. Wait it out, get a second stars line, then Gust, and that would be a game ruiner.
Now, initiative is in favor of Lumi. If Lumi plays Foresight, he uses his mana first. He's very smart.
So Lumi takes the Lumi actually, that's very interesting. Now, he doesn't take Foresight. So of course at the time I didn't know he had Foresight in hand. I guess he's saving it for the Ogre lane, which is smart. This is a smart play by Lumi.
We do have other options,
of course,
though.
we respect the Gust,
Celemene's favor.
and
don't get too
we're
crazy.
just not going to let it happen.
You've got time to do this. Great call by Swim. Must have predicted that Gust could have stopped that ramp, and that would have felt horrible. In fact, he pays with his life for it.
And now, there's no green hero in this lane next turn. There's no one coming in from deployment, only the Treant in lane 1. This could be a 3-hero Time of Triumph. Both of these players playing as if they could see each other's hands. Wow. That shows the level of play they're both at.
Yeah, that was extremely...
So, sometimes when you're in very unfavorable matchups, you need to assume the opponent doesn't have an answer to what you're doing, right? When you're in a kind of no-win situation, I elaborated on this about an hour or an hour and a half ago. When you're in a no-win situation, you have to think, okay, I have to assume he doesn't have his tools, otherwise I will lose the game. In this situation, though, Gust is not actually a powerful tool later. It's something I can actually brick by playing around. This is not representative of every card in the game. You cannot brick a lot of cards later by playing around them now, right? If you play around something like a duel, you can't really brick it later, because duel is always going to be very, very high value, no matter what, right? But Gust is something that you can try to lock in your opponent's hand and not allow value for if you play around it and respect it. If this was like, if I was thinking in a 20% favored matchup, you cannot play around a card where if they have it, you're going to be losing anyway, right? If it's something like Annihilation, you can't play around Annihilation, but you have to play around Gust. It's very, very important to understand that.
As we see Swim now ready to do whatever he wants. In fact, he doesn't even need the double stars line anymore. Now he gets to save a stars line as we continue in the game. 2 creeps in the first lane. That's pretty good.
17 gold for Swim.
Ooh.
One of the biggest problems with this red-green list is the lack of mobility if you're not running Darks here.
Pandas.
We see
Here we
Swim.
go. Panda's calling it. Panda knows exactly what's happening.
He made a deck list to play around the Storm deck. He has the Gust as well from the Drow. He has a better way to play around Storm, which is why he brought Gust instead of Darks here, which he made popular in this tournament.
So we do see Blink Daggers as well. So we do have a lot of mobility coming out with that 17 gold. We will see what purchases are made here as Axe.
So this is actually a fantastic call by Panda. This is exactly what's happening. I'm regretting not running Darkseer. If my Drow was Darkseer instead, I would instantly deploy the Axe to the middle lane, get the triple man Time of Triumph, and bounce him over right. Unfortunately, despite having 17 gold, I don't find a Blink Dagger, which means I cannot overcommit to the idea of mid, basically. So it's a little bit unfortunate that we don't have the Surge. This is the situation where like you don't find a Blink, you just want to time through heroes, you need that mobility. This is where I do wish I had the Darkseer.
Into the third lane to fight that Zeus, and our boy Bristleback staying in there and getting some creep support. Now, it's of course going to be a Time of Triumph in lane 2, correct? I mean, it has to be. There's no other heroes there, and it's a free tower shot. So we'll be seeing that. Oh, that arrow is not great. In the middle lane.
The Sanctum and the Foresight, fantastic draws for Lumi. Has Stars Align, has the Sanctum, maybe missing an incarnation of Salamene. Could find it with the Foresight, though.
Wants to be able to knock out still as many heroes as possible. The more green heroes you can knock out,
this is
the
an
less
interesting
chance
turn
that you
coming
get
up.
Storm to be able to
We're
take
thinking
off.
about
However, no duels, no
what
nothing
we want
for
to
this
ramp
Bristleback.
into.
So I think the goo is the best chance you got. And unfortunately, we're going to see some partying here in the first lane next round.
Because we've got 7 mana mid, we can
from Lumi
single
as well.
stars
Very
mid
nice.
And this is the turn
into a Timer
that Storm
Quorum,
can really take over the
or
board,
we could
finds the
even
turn onto his
double
sweep as well,
stars right
to widen the board for himself, while leaving only V-Train
into a
alive.
Timer Quorum.
Now this is so interesting because we saw Swim deal with a very far behind position last game, and he managed to crawl back. It's time to see if Lumi can do the same thing. I mean, Swim will be very far ahead with these lucky draws in the early game. However, they will be put down about just as early as Lumi's was last time.
Now, Conflagration teched in, I think, for Swim's Mono Blue. In this matchup, not going to find as much success
Great
with
call
the
by
armor
Panda as well.
on the Legionnaires,
Sure.
on the Axe.
So Lumi hard teched for
Legion
Mono Blue. He switched his decks in the group stages. He added in 2 Conflags and Tinker, which is basically black Conflag. So Panda's observing that these are great tech options against Mono Blue, but this is the nightmare matchup for them. It's really important that when you're bringing a tournament lineup, that your lineup is cohesive, right? You need your decks to complement each other. Now, you can do this in a few ways. You can try to target a meta deck and shut it out and be able to kind of abuse Conquest format and really just keep a deck down that you expect to see a lot, right? Alternatively, it's important to have your decks kind of balance each other, right? If I bring 2 decks that are kind of vulnerable to the same thing, then I'm going to be in a losing position. So by bringing something like this, like the fact that Conflag which is good against Mono Blue, is so bad against Ramp, is kind of important. It means he kind of has to counter himself one way or the other.
Yeah.
On the Treant.
Yeah.
On the Stonehall Elites.
Yes, I understand. Very good.
Keyfoot Plate.
Very intelligent pick there. Start the line into Time of Triumph, most likely, unless Swim has got a real special plan. I literally do not see any other idea here.
Well, unless his plan is disconnecting his opponent.
I'm going to be honest.
There's no way to stop this from coming down.
I'm going to be completely honest. I still have no idea what the correct play is here. Single stars mid for Quorum, single stars mid for Time, double stars right for Quorum, or double stars right for Time. I actually have no idea. I think it kind of doesn't matter, honestly. I think this game is won or lost off the opponent having an annihilation.
For some reason, we have seen it before.
I don't think there's a reason for that. Time of Triumph coming down this turn is massive.
He is taking a long time to think about it, but he's thinking ahead. He knows nothing could happen in this lane, so he's taking a moment to rope out a little bit, really think about where his life is headed. Does he actually want to do this Time of Triumph? Is it too much pressure? Will his mother be mad if he Time of Triumphs? Will his family disown him? Is there any way that life is crumbling around him? Where is Artifact going? Where's my life? Where's my career going?
Okay, guys.
Do people
if you were in
like
this
me?
situation,
What?
double stars mid, or sorry, single stars mid for Time, single stars mid for Emissary, or double stars right for Time, or double stars right for Emissary. Out of those 4 options, what's your choice in this situation? Because this is actually a difficult decision. And basically, this is the logic I outlined earlier, and it's really, really, really important. There's a difference between Gust and Annihilation. A very, very, very massive difference. Gust is brickable. Annihilation isn't. There's no way I can really brick Annihilation outside of maybe being able to play for initiative, which is very, very hard to do in a deck with no initiative cards against a deck with 2 or 3. Right?
What am I wearing?
The most important thing to do...
Did I take a shower today? There's the stars align coming out as he goes through the existential crisis and decides to finally play the goddamn
The most
cards.
important
He finds a
thing
light, finds a way out of that hole.
in my opinion, is basically understanding what the play around is. Because if you play around too many things, you lose value. You think about what you can play around and what you can't. We could play around Gust on turn 1. That's why we did. We can't play around Annihilation. There's no playing around that card if we want a chance at winning the game. In a different matchup, you can maybe play around it. In this matchup, if they have Annihilation, they will one-shot your tower in the time it takes for you to set up on the other lane, no matter what.
And the
So,
time of
because
will
of this,
come down now,
we choose the Emissary.
or we may see a secondary relapse.
The reason for this is because
that was the decision for Swim.
Emissary,
between Time of Triumph and the Emissary.
When you compare Emissary to Time,
the Emissary, of course, can be better countered by
so
Annihilation.
I think it's important to understand what these cards represent. Time of Triumph is a brawler card. You want Time of Triumph when your heroes are battling other heroes. Right now, we see one of our heroes attacking tower and one of our heroes attacking this creep. The reason Time of Triumph is much more than just a brawler card is it's a modify, which means, well, Emissary is technically a modify too, but all of its value is in the modify, which means it's safer against Annihilation, which is why it's the default play here. If you play safe against Annihilation, you want the Time of Triumph, because when they annihilate, your heroes still come back with time. Whereas Emissary might be more powerful to play early and keep tapping, but when they annihilate, the Emissary's dead and it's not coming back, right? So we can't play around Annihilation here. There's no playing around to that card. And this is, I think it's a really important lesson in what you can play around and what you can't.
When they come back, they still
because
have unless
if we're not playing around Annihilation, we need to be able to get more potential push power on the board early.
It's round 6 next time. The Quorum could get annihilated. You could lose that. Panda, you're the smart one. Why?
Your opponent might not have Annihilation. That's the case.
My God.
We talked about these players playing as if they could see their opponent's hands. Maybe they can.
As if. Well.
So, Emissary also saved the creep in that case, which just increased my pushing power. Makes it harder for him to defend. So we Viscous Nizhogud the Zeus. We do this because if there's a point at which our Drow is dead and our Axe wants to duel the Zeus respawning in like 2 turns, we need to Nizhogud to one-shot him and lock him out of options.
You see the kill onto Zeus, and
Nizhogud can't find other value for this matchup, so you might as well just use it there.
Take over, and next turn, where Lumi has these heroes coming back, where he has the 6-man available for plays like Annihilation, like at any cost.
Whew. A risky play, but one that may
isn't at any cost the counter for right lane. Guys, his deck doesn't run at any cost.
Now we can use that massive Time of Triumph potentially in another lane without.
Do you think running 2 Annihilations was a mistake for Lumi?
Has to find
so
Incarnation
I want to identify this. This is part of the reason the Storm deck is, I think, a worse version of Mono Blue. So we can look at the Storm deck. Let me actually pull it up here for you guys, because I think it's important to think about this. So we can look at the Storm deck that Lumi brought. Let me pull it up here for you guys. So I want to compare Storm to Mono Blue in a few different ways, but we have to think about. I mean, it's easy to look at Storm and see kind of how much you are effectively getting from running it. Let me. Where's the list? Hang on. Because I think this is actually worth talking about. It's very important to understand. Deck lists. Here we go. Okay, so this is Lumi's Storm deck. Okay, so this is Lumi's Storm deck. Okay, this is it right here. You get a lot of value from your combo pieces, but you have to give up an incredible amount. You are cutting at any cost. Sometimes you can fit in like 1 or 2 at any cost. You're cutting the 3rd Annihilation. You're cutting the 3rd Assault. You're cutting the 3rd Sanctum. You're cutting the Cunning Plans and Compels, which are... Cunning Plans and Compels are much better cards than they probably seem. These cards are actually very, very essential to the idea of this list, right? I mean, when you look at something like the 3rd Annihilation, it might be tempting to run it, but how do you fit it in? This list is too tight, right? There's not really any wiggle room in this. And this is kind of the difference between Storm and Mono Blue. Like, this list is extremely constricting. Like... running 3 Annihilations is probably the play if you want a hard target ramp more, but in this deck, you're kind of playing for a more aggressive game plan. It's less stally. All you need to do is draw 1 Annihilation, and you have a lot more draw power. I think, in general, it's probably proper for this deck to run 2 Annihilation, and that's exactly why I think this deck is probably not super good. It's not a bad deck, but the fact that to add your combo pieces in, you have to give up such powerful cards, and you do have to. It is correct to cut down to 2 Annihilation here. It does make the deck much more inconsistent and much more counterable as well.
Does he?
He'd be able to go off. He's at 7 mana in lane 1. He has a Sanctum as well.
Like, the mono blue deck is extremely tight. It's really hard to replace these cards with green
Swim does
cards.
not have enough magic. He does not have Gust without a green hero in this first lane.
The golden ticket. What do we have? Swoop over, my friend. I didn't see it's too quick.
Incarnation's not found, but Emissary is there. This is a wide lane.
So I bought another golden ticket.
Wide lane, wide boy.
Golden ticket is honestly just a powerful card in this side shop to buy.
Swim moves,
especially when you're unfavorable.
Berserker's Call is not an
Again,
option.
when you're in an unfavorable matchup, you have to be incentivized towards more risky maneuvers. Golden ticket is just something nice to have. Sometimes it can close out a game if you want to just kind of high roll your way into a win. It's honestly just solid. Like, it's just 9 gold, get some item, right?
I believe you meant wanted to
just
save that green
pretty
hero.
happy to see a golden ticket in the side shop.
We could see a Berserker's Call if Swim had it. He does not, but of course Lumi is playing like he could.
Sanctum comes down.
Oh boy, he knows some bad
Stars Align comes down, and the refresh will allow Emissary to be played.
Stuff's about to get real serious in this lane.
Incarnation would be the better option. But considering the board state right now, and considering Lumi's options, I think he does have to commit to this Emissary instead. Yep. He sees, he tests the water, he sees there is no duel or Berserker's Call coming down from Swim, although the mana is still available.
We do have the golden ticket.
We do.
We could golden ticket into a Niktasha's Guard, swoop those 2 away.
Einstein versus Enzio?
Ticket into Helm Dominator and steal the Emissary back.
Holy Christ.
That's an underrated comment.
But he has to do it now.
You have to play the ticket, Swim. Charlie in the Taco Factory, Willy Wonka's waiting. Show him the ticket.
I'm not playing
He's
the
keeping
ticket
initiative
slot.
instead.
Okay,
Really?
so at this point,
If he keeps initiative,
so card games are all about probability, right? You're basically accepting that you'll lose in a certain percentage of possible realities based on the hands that you're anticipating from your opponent and the likelihood of certain cards, right? So we look at a reality where his hand state is Annihilation plus Arcane Assault. There is literally no way to win in that reality. So we ignore that reality, right? We treat it as a non-entity. So we look at a reality where he has Annihilation and no Arcane Assault. That's actually interesting. We actually have a chance to win. So look at this. We need to punch through mid, and we need to punch through right, okay? So we have the Gust in our hand that we can use in the mid lane. Silence this Ogre. If we use the Gust on the Ogre dies. If we draw another initiative card, be it a Berserker's Call, a Gust, or a Duel, and the Zeus coming down, and he doesn't have the ability to steal initiative back without the Arcane Assault, we can actually secure a win even if he doesn't have Annihilate, or even if he has Annihilation. So in this case, we have to start passing for initiative, because we've identified a reality where we could win by passing for initiative in that reality, right? We are trying to play to the out of him having Annihilation and no Arcane Assaults, because if he doesn't have Annihilation, we win either way. If he has both, we lose either way. But if he has Annihilation and no Arcane Assault, and we top deck another removal card for the Zeus coming in next turn, we actually win by passing here.
He has
so
the Gust in the second lane. Guarantee that tower. The Arcane Assault, the Incarnation's found, but it's just too late. The Sanctum has already been refreshed. The mana has been spent.
This is really,
cannot be played.
it's actually, I'm going to actually elaborate on this a bit, because it's really, really, really important to think in this way. The biggest thing to understand from this framework is that you need to ignore realities where the game is either in a won or lost condition. You need to learn to ignore these, right? This is what I'm saying about, like, maybe not playing around with Annihilation, because, and that's why I play the Quorum in the second lane. In the reality where he has Annihilation in hand, it's very, very hard for me to win, right? Now, I kind of have a win condition there because of it, but you need to basically fight for the realities you can fight for, right? Because you don't know what he has.
Second lane can play the Gust.
And this is why when you're really far behind, you have to take risks. And when you're really ahead, you need to play ridiculously safe.
Down here will stop the Ogre from annihilating the lane with the Emissary like you talked about.
See you. And that is a big play. Now we know
why.
Now
the ticket comes down, and the Helm is not found, but the Cloak of Endless Carnage, pretty good value. That's +4.
That's not bad at all.
Net positive.
That's pretty good. So huge play, keeping that Gust, which is why he couldn't use the Ticket.
The second time
If Lumi goes for Diabolic instead of Secrets before Emissary, he
would not
wins.
be a play that's available.
Oh.
There's a free lane in lane 3.
Oh, let's see.
Keep talking, Panda.
Mist
We'll
can
keep
be
watching.
played with a Time of Triumph with the
it
stars
can.
align.
Oh, you know it can, Panda.
And it may start approaching to the end of the game from Swim.
Yes.
So I'm
18
thinking
games
to
coming through
myself
this
right
lane.
now how I can
But
accomplish
we do have
lethal.
some massive abilities to do some crazy
I have a
stuff
pretty ass
in the next
hands.
round. We do have a Salamani coming out in round
Now
1.
the arrow
Yes.
from the Emissary
Yes.
might be game deciding.
Yep. That
With the Jasper Daggers and Crimson Legion,
So if either of these arrows weren't here, I would actually be like
it
1
would have
damage
been
off lethal.
in this lane. Like we said, Mist goes into the last lane. We get +4 buff there. We're up to 22. The time comes down, adds +4 attack to each hero, and we're up to 30. So we're still 1 off. But it could have been close to game deciding there. 7 HP on lane 2. 22 HP threatened right now. Stars align into Time of Triumph. Makes this a very, very dire situation for Lumi. No Annihilation in hand. And Zeus has to come down into one of these 2 lanes to try and stop something here.
30.
Well, it'll be lethal now. Jasper Daggers.
Well, he could not do it. Lethal damage.
So
now,
we take this lethal.
is still
Honestly,
a
this
game.
lethal kind of doesn't matter
Luminous does
because
have Salamene
whichever
and
tower he
initiative
can
in round
defend,
1.
he will
Card
defend
has to
with
be
Zeus.
Annihilation. It is not.
We do have Emissary, though.
Thunder God's Wrath is much too... The units are just too
So at this
healthy
point,
for Swim.
And we
There's one specific reality where I win this game. Can you guys identify it? Because this is really important to play for. He has initiative right now, and we don't have an initiative card in our hand, which means he has the ability to gain initiative in the middle lane. And he has Zeus with the potential for Annihilation. So what is the very specific combination of things that allows us to win this game? Where he has no Annihilation? It's not that easy. It's not that easy. It's where he can't find... So he needs both Arcane Assault and Annihilation. He needs to be able to find Annihilation. We know he has card draw things, right? So he needs to be able to either find Annihilation and not have Assault, or he needs to have... So, okay, if he has access to both cards, we can still win as long as he draws the access to Assault too late. And
don't
doesn't have the mana
have an
to use
Ogre
it.
Magi. That
No
would
Blink
be the
Dagger, no
difference.
gold. Zeus has to go to lane 2. Lumi has to hope. He can play Incarnation, sure. He doesn't have multicast. He
Yep.
can't kill the heroes in lane 2. The only option here would have to be Annihilation. He has to find card draw. He has to cycle with Foresight and Arcane Assault. He can play Incarnation because he does not
So this
have
is
the mana
something,
right now
it's
unless
really
he goes down the
important.
line.
You can do
There's
this
a lot of
against
things that could
Storm.
happen.
Very few.
There's
Just because it runs to
Salamene and
Annihilation,
Arcane Assault
but
in the mid lane, potentially to
You can
draw
just
some
Stars
damage.
line has
play
been
to an
drawn.
out of them not having
There's
it.
no response.
basically,
There's no
because
duel
you
from
have
Swim.
to.
He doesn't have enough magic in his deck. Thunder God's Wrath comes down. He knows he has the infinite mana, basically.
Power is absolute.
He can refresh now. Stars align. He'll be at 9 mana. No response
So
here
at
from
any
Swim,
point,
so full solitaire
I could
mode
use this
for
potion of
Lumi,
knowledge,
and can start trying
but
to unlock his deck.
If Lumi just had Ogre
there
Magi
is a
in this
reality
lane, it
where
could
he
be so
has
much better.
Annihilation,
Incarnation comes
and what
down.
he's searching for
Foresight
is
and
the
Arcane
Arcane
Assault, the 2
Assault,
cards to cycle.
right?
He
I need to
Find it.
make sure he
Diabolic
needs
is a very
Another
good
to
card
have
draw.
both.
You got another one. We need that Annihilation. You got to keep Arcane Assault
You
here.
want to play Emissary first, get the double buff going, and
He's just gonna vomit out his
Never
entire
mind.
hand here.
Kill him. Well, nothing dies anyway, so it's still fine.
Oh,
Does not find it. He can still.
he got the dogs, though.
He has the Arcane Assault for cycle,
And he does have the dogs.
but this is not the Ancient Lane. It slacks.
I'm going
Doesn't
to
matter too much
watch
yet.
you die.
Right, he could expose the Ancient, though, and go for big damage if he could survive one more time.
Well,
Upon the power
He
of
might not.
fire.
Well, double conflagration.
It's going
Starts
to do
doing
something.
damage.
We do have Arcane Assault, so he can play that last. He could see if he gets it, and if he gets that Annihilation, this could be a disaster for Swim. Unearthed Secrets going down as well.
Look at my
We do
face,
have Prey
guys.
on the Weak to completely wash out this lane after the double Emissary
Watch
comes
watch
down.
watch this.
This Arcane Assault must be an Annihilation.
If not, he does still have Prey on the Weak.
So at this point,
Try, but there's a
I'm
second time
basically
trying, so
hoping
it
he
can
doesn't have
only be
Arcane
Annihilation.
Assault.
He has to play it.
Because I put him on having
an
Annihilation.
Ew.
Zeus is not a green hero, so Gust cannot be played. Blink Dagger's not in hand currently for Lumi. Swim knows that he does not have initiative. He can play. And this is going to be a Gust as soon as the Prey on the Weak is played. Or actually Time of Triumph to guarantee lethal here. Eclipse could have done something as well, but this will be a time of triumph from Swim. The siege damage will kill the tower. 8 damage going through. 3 mana up only for Lumi. At any cost would also still not be an option.
Look at him taking his time. Taking his sweet time.
Swim, he lets out a chuckle. He knows the game is his. There's no option here for Lumi to answer back. No items in hand either, and it's going to be the end of the series, the end of the day. Swim makes the comeback and gets the tower here at the end.
Wow! From literally the deepest depths of loss, Swim climbing back to defeat a very strong...
Or actually, I think there's a lot to talk about in that game. It was a very tight game. I think a major skill in card games is kind of playing to your out. Like, we got lucky, but the mentality you need to develop is basically you need to understand when you need to get lucky to win and increase the odds of you getting lucky in that specific way, basically. And there's a lot of skill to that. Like, how we actually played out this game, for example, not using Stars Line on turn 1 or turn 2 of the game, calling him on the Gust, it led us down a path where we ended up being able to win. That's a very, very unfavorable matchup going into it. I didn't really expect to win at the end there, but we opened ourselves up to the possibility as much as possible by, making the best possible plays.
Opponent in Lunimus. I'm out. I'm mentally drained. I'm physically drained. Lumi is dead.
So the question is, did Lumi misplay? And the answer, I think, has to be yes. I mean, we're not sure if he would have drawn Annihilation if he had played better, necessarily. So it's hard to say how that game would have gone. Lumi could have killed his own treant with Diabolic and played on Earth on that lane for one more chance at Annihilation. I think that's probably true. I think there's definitely some optimization plays he could have made. He didn't use the Diabolic before pressing Sanctum. Due to that, he couldn't play the second Diabolic. Yeah, I think that... And this is... Again, risks... The concept of risks fundamentally gravitate both players' win rates in both directions towards 50%, right? Because that's what risks are. They're coin flips. So when you think about it in that framework, the player that has a very, very significant advantage needs to understand this, identify it, and play extremely cautiously around their lose condition. The winning player, and you can be winning on turn 1 of the game. On turn 1 of the game, you can have a 90% chance to win, which is not, it's not even about flops or opening hands. It's more about the matchup RNG, as well as maybe like you're playing ladder and you just feel like you're a better player than wherever your ladder rank is. I say that jokingly because Artifact doesn't have a fucking ladder. but basically you have to identify what at any point what your current chances are of winning the game and play accordingly. So I identified my chances to win the game are really low, and I need to play to try to generate a win condition, which means assuming he doesn't have what he needs. Lumi sort of failed to do the opposite a little bit, which is kind of understanding that his chances of winning the game are extremely high and basically going all in on just trying to avoid the singular lose condition. Again, if Storm in this matchup has Arcane Assault and Annihilation, they almost can't lose the game. They almost can't. So if Lumi identifies this in turn 1 and basically just designs each play around reducing the odds as much as possible of this lose condition, effectively playing as safe as possible, right? Not taking any risks, taking stuff like Diabolics, and maybe trying to enable this on a Secrets. He did have the ability to draw a couple more cards there, potentially, I think. At least 1 or 2. And it's really, really important in card games to, at any point in time, identify whether you have to be the cautious player or the risk taker. It's a very, very interesting mentality to develop. Because the idea is you need to, as a player, calculate the average expected value of each action and then simultaneously often actually deviate from these average expected play lines, right? You have like this average play that's good, but you realize you're in a position where you can't play for average. You have to play for maximum or you have to play for minimum. You don't really often play for average. Okay. You play for average most of the time, but it's not as much of the time as people are doing it, right? You have to be playing towards win conditions or around lose conditions, depending on kind of your own perceived probability of winning the game at any time, which is why self-evaluation is so important. Welcome to the 1/8 Gay Club, Elendo. I'm going to go ahead and Just watch the casters wrap this up.
And that was an incredible series.
And that's going to be me missing only one of those matchups today. Every single other matchup in the bracket.
In retrospect, do you think that Emissary mid-turn was the best play? Honestly, I'm not sure. I think it probably was. However, I think that if he has Annihilation, it's a win for him, and if he doesn't, it's a win for me, no matter which card I play there.
Correct. So, panel, do you guys have the same luck? I don't think so. Charmer.
AKA identify which player is the beatdown. That's not really what I'm saying at all. It's not unrelated. Like, you have to identify which player is playing for which condition. I'm talking about just pure raw probability. It's not like beatdown. It's who's favored and who's unfavored, who's the risk taker. Like, they are not unrelated concepts, but they're definitely different.
I wanted to leave. I just didn't want to be here anymore. Lumi goes down.
Yeah.
Outworld Devourer.
Wow, what a hero.
Devour.
You know,
Sunspin.
Outworld Devourer was just about as underwhelming as the effect, the actual particle effects that come about from
Outworld
Essence Orb,
Devourer,
which there
underwhelming.
literally are 0. So
It lights up on the card.
that's
it.
I understand.
Like right on the
yes.
passive
There's
thing,
like
you
a
just
little tickle there. Yeah.
tickle.
It's not very noticeable. I mean, maybe Valve actually forgot that hero existed. It's like, yeah, we'll get to him last. He's on
Yeah,
the
patch notes, whatever.
yeah. But that was I mean, it's not very often you see Lumi lose twice in a row with Storm, right? Or Salamene.
Is it
Storm,
not that
whatever you wanna
often?
call it.
Storm went 0-4 today, right? Didn't Mugi lose twice as well?
Guys,
Or yeah.
How are
Pretty
these
sure.
casters surprised that Storm went 0-4? It's literally a dead deck. Like, we've known this for a month and a half.
He lost with it twice. Lumi lost with it twice.
Yeah.
Okay, to be fair, I'm exaggerating when I say it's a dead deck. It's not a trash deck. It's like, it's still a fine deck, but it's like, there's better options.
Listen, it did not do Lumi any justice here, which is very, very interesting, right? I would have thought for sure that if you were going to pick the deck that you want to play against
Swim
red-green,
versus
that the
Petrify.
Salamene Storm would be
Okay,
it.
so tomorrow we're going to open against Petrify. We get a nice little rematch. Petrify knocked us out in top 8 at C-Story. I need to actually look what his decks are. I can actually wrap this up after we finish this video. I'm going to go ahead and pull up Petrify's list and do a little bit of analysis on this.
Granted, right, you didn't find the Annihilation, or maybe Lumi could have pulled that last one out, but it was a bit of a surprising outcome there at the end.
Swim actually thought he lost,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah,
hilarious.
I mean, Swim himself was surprised. You could look at the camera; he's kind of shaking his head, and then the eyebrows, the classic Swim eyebrows, raise when the Prey on the Wheat gets played.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked. And I mean, for Lumi, it hurts because when he played against the mono blue deck, Swim ended up with 3 Annihilations.
Oh my
And
god.
when he played his blue-green
That's a
deck,
joke.
what we got?
the
We
hell
got
is
Ralphie.
What the?
Would you?
Ralphie.
These casters are just
What
trolling
up,
at this
dog?
point.
What up, dog? Hey, what up, homie?
What the
What is happening right now? Ralphie.
So
This
they're
is a really
God's
important
green
interview.
earth.
Just in case we wanted to
they're
interview with
just
Ralphie.
they're
Hi,
just
Ralph.
literally
What's-
just
what
trolling
up,
this
homie?
at this
Or-
point.
Listen,
Wow.
I mean,
I'm gonna go down the player profile for Ralphie.
okay,
Spam
talk to
on
me,
my
Ralphie.
dog.
Ralphie is a good boy.
He is a good boy.
He is a good
Wait, who's a
boy.
What
good
is
boy?
he, a clean boy?
Yeah, does he play? What the?
Why?
What do you mean?
I don't even. All right, I'm done. Just
Where is-
I can't hate.
What?
I can't take it
Swim,
anymore.
is Swim in the production booth? Is this his doing?
Swim's not a clean boy. Swim is the opposite of a clean boy.
I
let's
don't
be real.
understand what just happened. Congratulations to Swim.
Yes,
He
yes.
did give
That's
us
true.
the Outward Devourer. Actually destroyed a lane. He got a Blink Dagger.
Okay, dude.
He
and
finished
moved
off
over
the
and
game.
Finished it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 attack.
I am.
Never
That's
been
nuts.
seen before.
I can't question the man anymore. I
Yeah.
can't. There was even a time when the proc for OD hit and he got to
Okay.
cast more spells.
It actually mattered. Yeah.
And,
So they're
and
just-
he used it like as a Stars Align. He played a 1 mana and then ended up getting 2 more mana
Yeah.
from it. So maybe he just knows more than the rest of us.
Maybe.
Going
What a
into
genius.
tomorrow, most of our brackets are complete trash now. With of the resident genius, Panda. Panda still has Mago in the final, but knowing what we know now, who is the favorite moving forward?
Ooh, well, even though I picked him to lose in the first round,
okay. So I
did
think
that for
there's
secret reasons.
I've seen this last bit already. It's mostly just kind of like filler at this point. So real quick before I get off stream here, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to pull up Petrify's 2 lists. I actually have not seen his resubmissions yet. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up Petrify's 2 lists. I'm gonna talk about the key points of kind of what I'm gonna need to do in these matchups, what I'm gonna need to look out for. So we can just go ahead and do this now. Yeah, here we go. So let me go ahead and get these lists on for you guys. Okay, so all right. Here's Petrify's 2 lists. And if I beat Petrify and continue on in the tournament, then I will very simply just like I'll read those lists as I go. Honestly, I can't really be fucked to actually have to look at more lists than I possibly need to. Okay, so Petrify's 2 lists. This is quite interesting what we have here. Petrify's list number 1. He's got an aggro list. So this is black-red with Sorla and Tinker. 40 card deck, similar to like the kind of Hoi style deck we've seen in the past. Pretty tight, pretty much what we've seen before. No oaths. Instead, he's just running like 3 disciples. Heavier like on pretty much all the tools. This is a very, very straightforward deck. We've seen this deck a lot before. It looks extremely standard. The one thing is he doesn't run oath in here. So what do we think about this? What do we think it's favored or unfavored against? I think it actually might be pretty good in this matchup. It could actually be favored against both of our decks. I'm not sure how I feel about aggro versus mono blue. It's kind of weird. My own personal variant of mono blue could actually be a little unfavored against it. I might have needed to tech my blue a bit more in the favor of aggro. Not entirely sure. I think he might be able to race me a little too much. And certainly the Disciple Assault Ladders variant of this deck is pretty good against ramp. Now, it does come down to drawing those tools, and he doesn't have Oath, which is kind of one of the scarier things against ramp. But I kind of expect this deck to have a very favorable time against ramp and a slightly favorable time against mono blue in terms of my variants. I don't know. It really comes down to his draws, because we can stabilize against this deck as mono blue, but I think he can get under us a little too easily. I might be regretting running only 2 at any costs. It's possible that was a very, very poor decision on my part. At any costs might be a pretty good card, guys. Who knew? Oh well. And then the truly funny thing. Here's the really actually funny thing. So Petrify's second list, he just net decked ours. He net decked the... He literally... Dude, fucking Petrify. He titled it, "Sorry for net deck." He literally straight up just like ripped Darkseer plus Spot Weakness out of our deck to use it against us, which is really funny because we moved off the Darkseer. We're running Drow now. It's fucking hilarious, dude. Okay, so I mean, this is kind of a coin flip. Darkseer version will actually hurt us. Sorry, it'll hurt him in the mono blue matchup. Darkseer is ramp mirror tech, so basically this is the idea that he is going to be trying to hit this matchup against my ramp and trying to hit aggro against my mono blue in general. So it'll be a very interesting day to see how this plays out. Honestly, it could be anyone's game. I think lineup to lineup, I should be unfavored. I think not as unfavored as I was today. I do think my lineup could be better. My version of mono blue should have better anti-aggro tech, like Jamoy, for example. Should have run Jamoy. What am I doing? So even if Swim loses, he wins. I mean, I think this is a powerful ramp deck. I honestly think the Darkseer is kind of take it or leave it, but the spot weaknesses are incredibly strong in a way that people are just now understanding is insane. Spot weakness is fundamental in a ramp. This card breaks all the rules. I've talked about this so much. I've made a video about this on my channel. This card's nuts. Run this card. But apart from that, could be anyone's game. Good luck to you, Petrify. Hopefully that we'll continue on. We played pretty clean today, I think. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with my play today. I'm a lot happier than I was about my play in the groups, honestly. I had a really, really hard time winning against Lumi, and I still managed to pull it out. I did make 3 or 4 notable misplays that I caught. Dead any cost was a big one. First play of the entire series. But hopefully we'll just continue to make clean plays for the rest of the tournament. Okay, guys. That's going to be it for me. And I'll see you guys next time.